In this presentation, we'll discuss basic teaching strategies. First, eliminate distractions. Create an environment in which the child will focus, be calm, and engaged. Here are some suggestions. First, turn off the TV and radio and put away tablets and cell phones. Clear up clutter and toys. Make sure that the household pets are taken care of and won't be asking for food or walks. And use comfortable lighting in a calm space. Create structure using visual aids. Anxiety and attention deficits are sometimes a challenge for young children, so we can help them to feel more at ease and develop their thinking skills if we create a regular routine in their day. Reliable structure promotes positive behavior. Children who know what is happening and what is coming next feel less anxious and can learn a lot better. Visual schedules are very helpful to give children an idea of how their time will be spent. Children who have difficulty with transitions feel better when they can see what is going to happen and prepare. If the child is reluctant to engage in a learning activity, he or she may need some motivation. And you can use a first and then prompt, just like the one on the left of your screen, to offer a preferred activity after he or she has completed the tasks. Sometimes children have trouble processing too much information at once or keeping track of the order of events. As your child completes a task on his or her schedule, remove or cover that task. By removing completed tasks from the schedule as they are finished, we give children a sense of accomplishment and process. We also simplify the information that remains so they can easily see what comes next. To help children stay focused, it helps to show them how much time they are expected to spend. A visual timer can be used to show the passing of time. The red portion diminishes as the timer counts down to 0. Free visual timer applications can be downloaded and used on cell phones and tablets. Sarah Ward and Kristen Jacobson have developed a website with lots of effective tools for helping children to manage their time and organization. The app shown here represents the 3 phases of doing work: getting ready, getting materials necessary for work ready, doing and finishing, putting materials away, and getting work packed up for delivery to school and elsewhere. We can also give verbal prompts such as, okay, one more and we're all done. Or we can also use a visual prompt such as holding up fingers to show which step we are on. When getting ready to work, state your expectations. Using a child's name at the beginning of the sentence cues the child that you're addressing him or her specifically. Children often create pictures in their minds of the words that we say. If giving instructions, it's important to give them the positive instructions, saying what you want the child to do and not what you don't want them to do. If we say, don't run in the house, the last thing the child heard was run in the house, and he or she makes a mental image of it, which might make it more likely that he or she will think about running in the house. It's better to say, walk in the house, rather than don't run in the house. There are several ways that you can gain children's attention. Here are a few ways that you can try: getting closer to them, ringing a bell, or tapping on a table. You might try using a different voice tone or a silly animated voice. Use a special pointer or wand, or even a laser pointer. Remember to keep it lighthearted and use a positive expression. Once you have the child's attention, state what you want your child to do with as few words as possible, such as, Tim, get your new book, and then stop talking. Sometimes adults have the tendency to keep on talking and not allow a child the chance to process the information received. Children with autism often have a significantly longer processing time. If we wait and remain quiet, they can process and will likely follow through. This also goes for waiting for answers to questions. We have to allow longer processing time. We all like to have freedom and options in our lives. It makes us feel in control. Children like this too. We can provide some freedom and ability to make choices by providing options in the following ways. We can let them choose which materials to use during an activity, such as pencils, markers, or crayons. We can let them choose which activity to do first, second, and third, or which person to do the activity with. We can even expand the choices of time of day to do the activity, such as before or after lunch. You can let them choose the kinds of reinforcements that they'd have after the activity is completed. Just remember to make the choices reasonable for everyone concerned. If your child's nonverbal, you can offer choices by using a choice board, and they can point out to the choices that they'd prefer. Choice boards can provide children with a sense of control, and they teach a child to use requesting behaviors rather than crying, running away, or other less effective behaviors to meet their wants and needs. And they teach children decision-making skills. And when children can choose what they want versus something they don't want, we'll have less challenging behaviors. Here are a few examples of choice boards. These choices may be expressed in drawings, photos, symbols, or written text. It's recommended that written text labels be included so that eventually children can progress through the different levels of representation. Determine what types of choices you'll give and how many choices will be placed on the board. You can start with a small amount if the child has difficulty making choices. Initially, you should limit the number of choices and then gradually add choices once the child has had success in completing activities. Ensure that the child understands what the visual actually represents and teach this first if necessary. You may use actual photographs or objects at first to be sure that the child understands. You can experiment with different types of boards. Begin by supporting your child with help as needed, and then slowly decrease the help as your child is more capable of doing for him or herself. You can support your child by offering prompts to get him or her involved and responding to questions and task requests. Offering opportunities for children to respond to the least intrusive prompting and fading prompts will increase a child's initiative to take the next step. Provide the least amount of prompting necessary for success. The tip of the pyramid shows the prompting hierarchy from least to most. Independent means that the child is able to perform the task on his or her own with no prompts or assistance. Indirect, either verbal or nonverbal, means tell the child that something is expected, but not exactly what. You might say, "Now what?" or "What's next?" For a nonverbal prompt, you can use body language, such as an expectant facial expression, questioning hand motion, or a shrug. Direct verbal is when you tell the child what he or she is expected to do or say. You might say, "Turn the page." Gesturing indicates with emotion what you want the child to do. Modeling is when you physically show the child exactly what you want him or her to do. Partial physical assistance is done using minimal supported physical guidance. And full physical assistance is when you provide hand-over-hand guidance to help the child complete the desired task. Keep expectations high, but if a child becomes distressed or distracted, it may be necessary to reduce the length or size of a task. You can use a brain break activity to help the child self-regulate. Breaks can be fun and silly, or just simply some quiet time to relax. And be sure to give lots of positive feedback for paying attention and staying on track. Also remember that young children typically stay on task about the same time as their age, so for a 3 or 4-year-old, the child can stay focused from 3 to 5 minutes. But for children with developmental delays, it may be closer to the developmental age. Brain breaks involve getting children physically active, changing their energy levels, and getting their blood pumping. You can access some brain break videos through clicking on the link on this page. If the child likes music, try some activities with music and movement. In this video, we'll see how using a reinforcer, a ball, can help the child to engage and participate. This child has been doing therapy for some time and is used to having his reinforcer ball taken from him.
What he's asked. sometimes. So we're going to take it away. I know you like that ball. It's right there where he can see it.
Now we can see that he isn't happy about giving up his reinforcer, but he's used to doing it, so he doesn't have that much of a negative reaction. But if you're working with a child that isn't ready to give up their reinforcer, you're probably going to have a much bigger response. The way we would avoid this is to provide the child with the prompt warning him that he has 1 minute left to play with the ball, and then it's puzzle time. As soon as he completes the desired task, he gets his ball or reinforcer back immediately. When we do this, we want to set time parameters for children, saying something like, "Okay, 1 minute of ball time." This way it gives them an idea of how long they get to play with the ball before they have to do another task. You can make this a visual time timer for children who don't have the concept of how long a minute is. Let's see how he does.
And this is what the therapist calls errorless learning. I'm going to do 2 of the puzzles and leave the last one for him. D for dog.
So the mother completes the task and shows him how to do it, and then invites him to do it.
Dylan's turn. Fishy. Dylan, do it.
Dylan, do it. She
Dylan,
gives
do
him
it.
verbal prompts and then physical prompts, and then follows up with an even more intense physical prompt of hand over hand.
Good job. You did it. Here's your ball.
Notice how she does the hand over hand because he's not doing it independently at this point, but when he's more able to complete tasks, she can fade away the hand over hand prompts. Also, note that she gave the ball back immediately following his completion of the task. We want to make sure that we do this when we're using reinforcers to make sure that they continue to be reinforcing.
Good job.
Lots of praise and
You
reinforcement.
like that ball, don't you?
One of the strategies we use is a first-then schedule on a board like this one. We use them proactively before a problem occurs or when a child refuses to complete a task. In order to motivate a child to engage in complete activities, you'll want to use reinforcement for positive behaviors like sitting, focusing, starting, and completing activities. You can use the Hippie Card Preference Profile to determine which kinds of reinforcements will be useful for the child. Decide which ones to use and have them ready before you start working together. Use these with the first and then boards and again after completing new skills successfully, like this. First, we read, then we play with bubbles. Sometimes we'll have to rephrase questions that are written in language that's difficult to understand. If your child is a literal thinker, you may have to rephrase some questions. If your child doesn't have functional speech, you can ask them to answer by pointing to a picture provided for you in the supplement. So for example, if the question asks, which animal jumped into the pond, you can rephrase the question, point to the animal that jumped in the pond. To be sure the child understands what is happening in each picture, read the answers out loud while pointing to the pictures provided. Then let the child point to the right answer. If the child does not know how to point, you can begin with hand-over-hand prompting. Eventually, we want to fade this prompting away gradually so that the child will point on his or her own. You can also cut the pictures out and rearrange them to make sure the child isn't just picking the one that's first or middle or on the right. Some children will gravitate toward one side or another of the paper and always point to a certain side. By cutting and moving the pictures, you can be sure that the child is choosing what he or she really thinks is the right answer. Sometimes children are unable to provide verbal responses. In this case, it's okay to provide a child with the language they need for open-ended questions. For example, you may have prompts in the curriculum that request the child to tell you about his or her picture. If the child's unable to tell you, you may say, I see in your picture that you drew some shapes with the black crayon and made some bouncing lines with the brown crayon. I also see some green marks and blue marks. It looks very active. Specific praise is very reinforcing and gives feedback to children about what they did well and what you'd like to see continue. Saying "good job" alone doesn't really convey very much. If we want our children to know what positive behaviors and skills they developed, we must be more specific. Tell the child what they did well. You might say, "You really paid attention to the story. You were able to answer all the questions." Be specific about what you liked about it. For example, "I like the way you sat calmly next to me to read. It was fun to read with you." Encourage any positive responses and behaviors. You might say, "You're really getting good at saying the title of the book. You turn the pages nice and gently." Ignore whatever behaviors are not on task. Praise can provide good feedback and encourage the child to participate more during the next HIPPY activity. Thank you for watching. We hope that you will practice and use these basic strategies when using the HIPPY curriculum with children.